This is the CopThink podcast, where we answer the question, why do the police do what they do? I'm the host, Brian Kesey, and my guest is Andy Lewis. I'm going to say Andy is an expert on police horses. I'll say that more clearly, police horses. And the topic of conversation is going to be, in the 14 years that you did mounted patrol, what did it teach you about humans?
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to start out just by saying that, the biggest thing about humans and horses is that obviously one's a prey animal, one's a predator animal. And so, a few years back, I was given the opportunity to come in as a subject matter expert for horse behavior in a deposition on a personal injury claim against one of the boarders at a barn and the barn owner, where the person that was boarded there got bit by a horse that wasn't their horse, and was claiming that it was the fault of the barn owner. And so to get ready for that, I did some research on domesticated animals and the injuries that are sustained from them every year. And at the time, it came out to be the top three were dogs in the lead, then cattle, and then horses. And if you look across at the populations of those animals and how many there are, there's way more dogs, and not almost in every house or every other household you're going to see a dog. When there's less cattle, obviously, but there's a lot more cattle than there is horses. So for those to be that close together, and I don't remember what the numbers were, but to be that close together, it would say that, horses are far more dangerous than the other animals. And despite the fact that, the horse is so much larger, you're talking, especially for police horses, I think the smallest horse we ever had was about 950 pounds, and we had some that were close to 2,000 pounds. So, the differentiation between human and horse there is quite a bit different. So, the reason why they are so dangerous is because, unlike dogs, where dogs are predators and humans are predators, horses are prey animals. And so there's just a whole different set of what's important to those animals compared to. But as humans, we always like to, put our, humanistic attributes to animals and expect them to behave that way. And it just doesn't work with horses. And so that's where people, have a tendency to take, put them in situations where they're going to act differently than they would, or it is just the way they're going to act, but they just take way more chances than they should with the animals. And so, as someone that's going to train in a horse, the only way you make it safe is that if you practice and train and understand why things are happening, just like anything else. But you got to bridge that language gap of how do I tell this horse what I want to do. And it's real easy to try to control them, and because if you look at what way predators and prey are, predators, we compete to win. We want breeding rights, we want eating rights and everything like that. Whereas prey animals, they just compete to survive. Everything for them is just flight or flight. They just, it's reactionary. Everything is trying to keep from getting eaten by other things. And so they're going to react constantly to that. And the way that they do that and survive it, they have, their herd, but within that herd there's a dynamic. And the dynamic has to be from top to bottom. There's somebody that's ahead of you in that dynamic. And as long as you fit into that dynamic, you're accepted into the herd. And they want just peace. They want everything to be relaxed because everything is scary to them. And so anything different than that is going to be scary. So, if you come into them acting like a predator, like we do, for example, one of the biggest things about horses is, or I guess prey and predators. Predators, we always move straight line to everything. So we go from point A to point B. We're hunting point A to point B. We fixate on what we want and we go after it. Horses, they amble around all over the place because it's like, well, this smells good. I'll go over and eat here. I'll go over here. And so when they approach and move, and it's also the way that their vision is. We look straight forward. We have binocular vision. Horses can have binocular vision, but they also can look 360 degrees around, except for they're right in front of them and right behind them. So they're constantly, but their vision is what's called a ramped vision. So what that looks like is it's very clear at distances, but up close it looks almost like a fun house. And so they got to constantly tilt their head back and forth and move around. So where you approach that horse or where they approach each other is very important because it gives them the best vision without being scared. And so with our with our thinking, when we see a horse, we want to walk right up to him. Well, that's scary to them, because it's like horses don't do that to each other unless they're looking for a fight or something like that. They're not going to do that because it's just not in their nature. So, just when you approach them, just doing that certain thing like that shows them right away that, okay, this person might know they might know how to speak my language. Okay, I know normally I'm not going to do that because that's not how I think, but I've got to change my way of thinking to adapt to them. Otherwise, I'm trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't work. And we have the ability as humans to think around that, where the horses don't. They can't say, well, I'd rather act like a human so it goes easier on me. They just don't think that way,
So do you actually, when you approach a horse, even, do you actually walk to them up in your body? You purposely manipulate your body behavior?
Yeah, purposely manipulate. There's a lot of things. I mean, that's a simplification of it, but there's a lot of other things. Direct eye contact. As predators.
So you avoid eye contact.
I avoid eye contact unless I need to use it. I can always switch back to my predator mode if I feel like something immediately needs a change. I can do that to my advantage. But learning that, and I didn't, to go even deeper to that, and it's just it's kind of like an oversimplification of it, but horses as a survival mode, they're always in tune to energy. And I'm not talking about there's energy in everything that happens. So you have kinetic energy, magnetic energy, all this different kind of energy. And horses, being bigger animals, and the energy I'm talking about, though, that they're in tune to is energy that comes off of the heart, so that the heart rhythm and the mental energy that's created out of your brain. They are so in tune to that because they have to be, as soon as they smell or anything, it's called and I don't want to keep running in circles here, but it's called the swarm theory. So if you're a horse in a herd, you're all within a certain thing. The swarm theory is like bees. If a bee senses a threat, none of the other bees have to know what the threat is. They go all after it because they all sense it at the same time. Horses are the same way. If one of the horses sees a threat, they all sense it because that horse acts differently, and it raises their energy level, and then it's felt across the herd, and they all react instantly. That's how it keeps them from being killed. And so what you need to do when you're dealing with an animal like that is you have to learn to really maintain an energy, a neutral energy. So they don't feel like it's threatened. It feels like it's calm, and they will actually invite you in there or look for that calm energy. And any horse that in that herd that acts differently than that, because in a herd you don't want to stand out. You just don't, because that's dangerous. If you stand out and bring the attention of a predator, you're the one they're going to go after. So horses specifically want to try to be low key and not stand out. And so you'll see them. Very rarely will they ever bicker with each other, because it's like that shows anything. You don't want to show weakness and that kind of stuff, and it all plays into a huge thing. If you think about it, as humans, we want horses to perform, and so a horse is going to, in their natural ability, perform at a level. Even if they're in pain, they're not going to come up to that level because they don't want to stand out as being weak. It's in their DNA. They can't change it, and so understanding that, it really is hard for police officers to fit into that, because police officers were type A. We want to go hard. A lot of just energy, and that freaks horses out. And so a lot of officers that I've tried to train in over the years didn't do a very good job at it, just for the fact that personality could never turn it off. And you've got to be able to turn it off. And even myself starting out, I didn't realize how important that was. I just thought, well, you make these horses do what they want to do. And it was like, I was lucky because, I've always been a person that really does a pretty good job of regulating fear. And that's a big thing, because a lot of energy is derived from fear. And it causes you to get, a lot of hostility and a lot of anger, and that kind of stuff that comes out is usually because of fear or pain or something like that. So, I've always been very good about regulating that. And so I would be able to pick horses into a situation that were way more stressful, but it's just because I didn't get upset. The horse can feel the horse feels everything about you, and that's part of that connecting that together. And like I said, it sounds a lot of voodoo stuff, but it's just reality. I mean, like I said, if a horse is a 1,200 or 2,000 pound horse, and you're 185, 200 pounds, just the sheer mass of your heart compared to their heart is is a lot less. So like human beings, there's been a lot of studies on this, on measurements and stuff, and it's basically kind of like they call it a magnetometer, but it's basically a fancy compass. And so it measures, wavelengths of energy and that kind of stuff. And I'm not, like I said, 100% sure on how it works, but they can measure, how much energy can you put off compared to what a horse is. And for humans, it's usually around 10 feet. And then it's, for horses, it's about 50 feet, because of their size. But, a lot of that is the reason why, you can feel things about people, hey, I feel something feels weird because about this guy. I don't know what it is. But it's because you can sense or feel their changes in energy patterns, if you're close enough, that just cause you to think, okay, something's not right here. Because, if the situation is everything's calm and one person's not calm, it's just like the horses. If everything's calm and one horse freaks out, then there must be something going on, because they don't know why else would they be freaking out. And so your goal the whole time is not to ever get them in that threshold, and be watching them and feeling them. And so that's what eventually, towards the end of my career with the horses, I was able to take a horse that normally would be very anxiety driven and very upset in a stressful situation, and then walk them through a crowd of people, on like a lead rope, and have kids crawling all over them and everything else, and not have them go stressed out, because they're watching me as their other herd member. We're sharing this energy pattern. As long as my energy pattern, when I talk about energy pattern, kind of talk about a coherent heart rhythm, or coherent energy pattern. And what that basically means is that, when the rhythm of your heart and the rhythm of your head is consistent together, then you have like a calming, neutral pattern, and it's in sync with each other. And so when that happens, it's a very low key energy thing, and it's when you're sitting at home and you're feeling good and everything else. Usually that's you've got that going on. So knowing that horses pick up on that, it's like I don't want to do anything to disrupt that horse, because he's going to be constantly watching me and waiting for me to do something different. And there's a lot more that goes into it, obviously. I mean, as far as the way I'm carrying my head, I always carry my head down, to show the horse that, there's, because when horses get upset, they bring their head straight up. So if I bring my head straight up, he's going to be, what's he doing? I mean, they're watching you that closely. And they feel everything. Like I said, they feel everything, and they've tuned in. If you're training with the same horse for a long time, or even if you know how to pick that up quickly with a horse, then they're going to be watching you. They're going to ignore everybody else. And no matter else, if anybody else freaks out, but they're worried about you, because they're sharing your coherent pattern. And so, at first, like I said, when I first started out, I thought it was, I'm doing this, I'm controlling this horse, I'm doing everything. And then towards the end, it was like, you know what, I can't do anything unless this horse is willing to do it with me. And so I guess the roundabout thing is that if you apply that to dealing with human beings, which is different, obviously, human beings are still in that pattern, but if you're doing things and looking for patterns with people that enables them to come down to your level, it makes it way easier and safer to deal with people. So like if I go in somewhere, I know people are going to be stressed out, I can't let that elevate, because if it elevates, I know they're going to elevate. If somebody's upset or angry, I'm not going to look them in the face like I would in a predator, and I'm trying to stare them down and be like, hey, I'm control here. I'm not going to do that, because it's going to cause them, you're going to put them back in the corner, and they're going to do something. But if I can kind of bring it around, and one of the neat things that I've really learned about since I've kind of gone back to being on patrol and dealing with people, and a lot more calls and stuff, is that I'm thinking, with horses, I never would go, in the beginning I didn't, but towards the end I would never go start working with a horse, and unless I knew that horse was ready to work with me. And so in the horse world, they call that joining up, and it can be done a bunch of different ways. You can do it, you put a horse on a lunge line and you work them in a circle and try to get them to, and certain horses are just like people, they give you different cues. So like, if I told you I was ready to listen to you, I might sit down, I might be quiet, I might look you in the face. Those are cues to you to know that, this guy's ready to talk. But if I'm walking in a circle and not looking at you, not talking to you, it says, hey, maybe it's not time to talk to this person. So, when I go to a call, I'm looking for that join up, whatever it is. It could be, somebody sits down, or somebody looks at me for a minute and they give me their attention. And if I can't get it out of the person that I think is an issue, then I'm going to go to somebody else that may be in the room. If I can find somebody that's going to join up with me, I can join up. So now we're joined up. Now we're we're in the same energy. Now I got to work on getting that person to come into us. And so it's a huge thing that you've thought about, and it's a kind of a plan that you got to set up within just a few seconds. But it's like, you know what the end result is. The end result is I want them to be joined up with me, talking calmly, relaxed, and find out what the problem is and see where we can go with that. You know, and the thing to this is that you have to really be willing to give the time to this. You know, it might take, like I said, with a horse, sometimes you can find a horse, some horses are very willing, they're like, I want to go to work, I want to do everything because I don't want to make you upset at all. And they're just like people, and you might get them in the first 30 seconds. The other horses might take an hour to get them to hook up with you and get them introduced to you. But to get the result you want, if you're willing to, you have to take the time. It's the only thing, it's the only equalizer that allow you to do that. Because if you try to cut corners or push it, something happens. You're gonna lose out. It's just like, if I can, one of the biggest things about, you know, like, persons in crisis is a huge thing for our department right now. Deal with these people, and it used to be certain things, but now it's like, there's no way that you can be, I mean, well, it probably is if you put the time into it, but I haven't found a way that you can be an expert on everybody's issue, because everybody has different traumas or whatever it is that's causing them to have their issues. So you're not going to be an expert on that. So if you pick a chance, if you like, say right away you want to ask them, are you taking your medication? That'll turn off a lot of people, and that ends it right there. They're just going to walk away from you. You lose them. So that can't be your first thing you go to. You've got to pick something else. And like I said, to me, the energy management works in almost every situation. It may take a while to do it, or you may have to go at it a different way. And like I said, you might have to go to somebody else first before you can come back to the situation. And then you have to be willing to say, you know what, know your limitations. Hey, I can't handle this one. It's going to have to go to somebody else because I'm not being able to get that joint up that I need or whatever. I'm not going to go into this situation because I know if I cut that corner, I'm going to make it worse. You know, and so, you know, I never used to think like that. I used to think that, you know, I had to be in control. I had to do these things. And like I said, it took me just learning how to think like another species, a whole different type of thing that was different to me, to realize, you know what, you can't do it that way. You know, it's just a hard way to do it. And there's people out there, and like I said, when I first figured out this thing, I wish I would know the article the guy read about it, because the problem came when you're trying to teach other people how to do this thing that's, you know, is super dangerous. And it's, you know, inherently, I mean, one of the biggest things, it's the funniest things about cops and teaching them how to ride a horse, because most of the cops that we had come in had no prior experience dealing with horses, is that you have to tell them to acknowledge their fear, because there should be a fear coming off, because you can get hurt really bad. And so a lot of cops don't want to admit they have fears about anything, and you probably know about this, but I mean, it's just, that's the hardest thing for especially people in our line of work to admit, that you're afraid of things, because we say we're not supposed to be afraid. We're supposed to run into things, but it's like you have to admit that, because if you don't admit it, it's going to be like a wall in front of you, because you're going to try to avoid it and you're trying to go around it, and it just is always going to be there. So as soon as you can say, you know what, hey, it's okay to be afraid to fall off. It's the landing that sucks anyways, you know. So I mean, it's like we're seeing it, and there's, like I said, it's easy to say it's a very small thing, but there's other things that you have to have, I guess, set up to be a backdraft for that, you know. You know, it's your theory of death and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, to me, I don't really haven't worried about dying like that, because I have that controlled fear, you know. And it's like, I know it's there, I know there's a possibility, but it's like, let's focus on the mission, and how can we make that safer? We can make it safer by understanding what we're doing here. You know, learning how the horse talks is the first thing, because like I said, why does that, you know, it's very frustrating when somebody tells you to do something with a horse and you just have no reason. It's like, why isn't this working? I see them doing it. It's like, because the horse is willing to do it. You're not going to make them do anything they don't want to do. You're just not going to. I mean, they're just too huge. I mean, you can scare them, but that's only going to last for a certain amount of time. So you really, really, really have to be, you know, and like I said, it's not something that you pick up one day. It's something you got to constantly be reminding yourself of. Okay, and every time the horse makes a mistake, what did I do wrong? That's what you really got to start believing in yourself, that, you know what, it is never the horse's fault, it's my fault. I did something, I missed something he's trying to tell me, you know, and how can I fix this, you know? And the worst thing about it is that, you know, just like anything, when you get into doing something, your ego gets in the way. And when your ego gets in the way, then you close yourself off, and then when somebody comes and say, hey, wait, have you thought about this? Then you shut them off, and then it's lost. You know, it's lost. So, you know, I bumped into that a few times in the 14 years, whatever, that I was doing this. And it's like, it really started taking some, because I came off a lot. When I first started, I was coming off like, 2 or 3 times a week. And
Coming off.
Yeah, I mean, like getting bucked off, getting thrown off, and doing all these things. And it took getting really hurt pretty good once. And say, you know what, you got to really start thinking about this. And then every time after that, it would happen again. It's like, well, you got to think of it a different way and everything else. And like, when I found this energy, I was talking about this article, when I found out about this energy thing, because I'm like, well, what is it about me that makes it so easy for me to do this, and kind of a natural thing to kind of pair up with these horses? I mean, I just started doing, this started happening. I wasn't like reading about it, didn't read about what to do.
So you weren't, whoever taught you.
Never taught me anything about this.
This is something you discovered,
I discovered
out of your curiosity.
Yeah, and where it came from was teaching other people. They'd be like, well, you just don't fear it. You don't have any you're not afraid of it. And I'm like, well, it's not really that. And it's like, well, you do this and do that. And, one of the things that people that have worked with me and have accused me of having this kind of ranger mentality. I was an airborne ranger in the Army, and so it's like the mission is the most important thing. So whatever it takes to get the mission, then you do it regardless of whatever damage comes to you or anything around you. And it's like, yeah, I kind of think like that, but that's not really the thing in play. Because to me, safety, especially with doing, as a trainer, that's one thing I wish everybody had a chance to do in the police department, was be a trainer and I'm not talking about just somebody gives you some information to train to somebody, but something you have to actually come up with on your own, because it's a huge responsibility. And just that I'd lay awake nights thinking, okay, did I teach somebody something that's going to get them killed, or hurt? That's just, it's something that is really, really, you take seriously, and it causes you to really kind of evaluate always what you're doing. And so, I wanted to give people an answer of why is this working for me and not working easily for other people. Well, a lot of it comes, I guess, from, I've always kind of had a hard time with processing and applying emotion to things. I just never really get that passionate about too many things. I mean, I don't get angry easy. I don't really get super excited about stuff. I'm just kind of neutral all the time. And so that came kind of naturally. The other thing is that, I got big into martial arts, traditional martial arts, with Japanese, kind of the same stuff the samurai would use and stuff. And that, big part of it was meditation. And I used to think, well, a lot of this stuff is bull crap or whatever. But once I started doing it a lot, and part of the meditation is that you're trying to empty your brain and not think about anything, so you do some counting and some breathing and stuff like this. Well, then it does get to a point where your head kind of empties and you just kind of sit there. Well, then my sensei at the time, he would come up to you, he would kneel down, and he'd like to see if you're actually in that state or if you're just faking it, because it's easy to fake, And he would just wait to see you movement. If you'd see eye move or something like that, then he would throw a punch into your solar plex, and it would drop you. I don't know if you've ever been punched in the solar plex, but it'll drop you quick. And it's probably just as effective as getting hit in the head or you're knocked out or something like that. But anyways, you would start to feel him there. As soon as he'd kneel down, you would just feel it. And I just it seems very weird, but it's just a physiological thing. It's not something that is magical. It's just a physiological thing. When you're in that state of just not thinking and emotionally clean and not, it's like you're aware of a lot more things. And one of them is energy patterns. When that's disrupted, you feel it. And so thinking about that, well, there's got to be a reason why. That must be applicable here somewhere. And that's when I started investigating this thing. Found an article, but I wish I could remember her name. I can't, because I'm horrible at that. But, it talked about, horses and basically how they rely on this energy in their group to monitor it. And I'm like, that's it. That's got to be it.
So you were a successful mounted cop for how many years before you really made this turn?
Well, I would say this portion of it probably in the 12th year, because I was so excited to talk about it when I found it, and there was a couple of people that I really respected that have been, you got 30 years of horse, and one of them was one of our fairs. The guy put the shoes on the horse, and the other one was our dog, our veterinarian. And I'm like, man, this is just amazing. She's like, and I was like, I got to learn how to teach this to the people that and he's like, listen, this is like a 10 years with horses minimum to understand this, because you've got to see how this plays out in every avenue. I'm like, yeah, well, there's got to be some way to cut it, and there really isn't a substitute for that experience. But I think that being exposed to that, saying, you know what, you really have to understand where this comes into play, especially in our line of work, because you're taking a horse in places that just they're not expected to go. They're not expected to go down the middle of, 7th Street. They're not be pinned in between buses and having people honk and people running out from they're not that's not in their nature, so you've got to really learn to control yourself, because like I said, once you've shared that energy pattern, the two of you are sharing an energy pattern, the horse is trusting you. In the horse's mind, he really doesn't care what's going on, because he's accepted the fact that you're higher in the hierarchy to him, and he trusts you that you're never going to, because of a history, you've never put him in a situation where he's been in danger or he felt like he was in danger. And when you have, you've tried to work him through it at his level to make it, and it's just like, it is with when you raise kids and stuff. You got to build that trust over a long period of time. But like I said, when you can speak that language, the time is a lot smaller. So I can come in, I guarantee you I could go today. I haven't been around a horse in almost a year. I could go outside right now if there was 10 horses out there and we all walked out there, I guarantee they would come right over to me. And it would just be because I would instantly go back to that, just relax. And like I said, it really applies, I think, because we recognize human behavior. This is one of the things, like I said, when I talked about emotion and stuff, I struggled for a lot of years of watching people and reading emotion in people, because I never really felt like I felt the same way they did in certain things, so I would have to mimic what they were doing, and it just felt awkward. So, but I know I could recognize that. It's like, well, okay, so this person obviously is sad about this, even though I would never be sad about this. I'm giving them the respect that they're feeling sad about it. It doesn't matter, because it doesn't me. So looking for that, and then all of a sudden being realized, you know what, there's an easier way for me to do this, and it's just by feeling energy and watching these cues. Because like I said, I can associate what it feels like when I'm calm and what I feel when I see that in other people. And it's like, if they're going to be, that's when you're upset and you're stressed out and freak out and your world's coming apart, you don't expect somebody to walk in and be like that. It just doesn't fit and that's the same thing with horses. Horses will test you, and when you do something like, let's say I might kick out at you, I can react by freaking out and kicking back at them and everything else. But if I just act like with curiosity, or I just like act, it's no big deal, then it really, the horse is like, whoa, I just did that and you didn't do anything. It really trips their mind up, because they're expecting, because in the wild that would happen if they would do that. But if you react differently, like with curiosity or just being neutral, not getting upset at all, it shows them that, you know what, you are stable, you keep it stable, and that's what I want to be around. It makes me feel safe. And you can do, like I said, you can do the same thing with people, even though it's a different kind of thing. And like I said, it was, I listened to a lot of officers, and so there was a long period of time where I was dealing with the horses, where I feel like I don't have that day in and day out stress of taking all these calls and stuff. But I didn't really have that before. I just was looking at it a different way. What was stressing me out has always been like personal stuff and everything else like that. Work has always been like a relief from that. But I could see where it would stress you out if you would get pulled into those emotional situations. But to me, I don't let that happen, because like I said, if I go in there and they haven't joined up with me, I'm not going to handle it that way. It's just not going to work, because I know I'm not going to be effective, and it's just going to make things worse for whoever I was going to have to deal with it. And so, like I said, if it's a PIC person and I don't have any idea what's going on there, contact the medics, because the medics are real good about that stuff. They're dealing with a lot more, like you said, you deal a lot more with the more human nature side of things. And it's like, like I said, there's so much going on today with, like I said, people on.
Wow. I didn't really know who you were. I knew you were a mounted cop. And I remember seeing you in the hallway one time after you had come back to patrol. Mm-hmm. And we started up a conversation, and it was just like this. I think both of us it was after work, mm-hmm. and you talked for 45 minutes, and it blew my mind. I just, hearing you talk, I've written a bunch of notes. I can't, I'm overwhelmed with thoughts of questions and things I want to ask you. Mm-hmm. But a couple things I want to point out. One is maybe we should call this HorseThink, not CopThink, because mm-hmm. I can see a lot of benefit. Did you say you're going to CIT training tomorrow?
Yeah.
I could see where you should train. You could take an hour of that training, and we could all learn a lot. even this neutral energy thing, that was fascinating too. I do think that I was just today was thinking about how I had come from ambulance work to police work. Mm-hmm. And I had to really learn to be more assertive and more dominating. Mm-hmm. But it didn't, and I kind of had to shed those skills that I had as a paramedic mm-hmm. and just get rid of them. But now I realize they were really useful, and once in a while I'd pull them out. And that one neutral energy thing is a good example, because you've been on police calls where cops come in already deciding how things are going to go, yeah. and they'll just pound that round peg into a square hole. Yeah. And so amazing. Also I hear you say a couple of things that made me realize at the front end of this, and it's kind of a meditative process, and that is surrender and unlearning. Because it seems like that's really a big part of what you had to do. I mean, had you been around horses growing up? You said you grew up in Iowa. I was born in Iowa as well. No. So your first exposure to horses was what? As a cop or?
Yeah, I had family that boarded horses, but they were other people's horses. We never dealt with them when I was a kid. I didn't know anything about them. I mean, I didn't really have any desire until I came here, and there was a situation that happened pretty early on in my career that, I decided that's what I want to do, and it was just...
You mean you're a patrol cop and you saw a horse?
Yeah, it was actually like the second night I was on the street in training, was during they had the state capitol, they had that, the Taste of Minnesota is down at the state capitol.
Sure.
And, I had, Hutchinson was my primary FTO. I mean, the guy was like officer of the year so many years in a row, and I'd been a cop in Iowa for 2 years, but just enough to kind of learn a lot of bad habits. And just the training level, where I've coming from a smaller department to a larger department like this, I mean, the training is just it's not even night and day, just not even comparable. But so, I mean, this first night I was out, they had that, when the fireworks went off, McDonald's had just put fancy rock garden around the outside of it, and traffic shut down, and then all these guys just started chucking rocks at cars, and there were shootings and stabbings, just total pandemonium and stuff. So when I came in the briefing the second night, they were like, well, we're going to be, if anything happens, we're going to go set up a perimeter on this McDonald's, and that's going to be our job, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, I didn't even have any gear, I mean, everybody's like, yeah, make sure you have your helmets and your bats. And I was like, raise my hand, I was sitting in the front row. Hey, they're like, what do you need? I was like, I don't have a bat, a bat. Nobody issued me that. And I think it was Commander Steve Anderson was the sergeant at the time, and he was like, yeah, anybody got a bat for Lewis? And everybody snickered, and I just put my hand down, and so we went there, and I got in the car, and I remember, I think, FTO was like, yeah, nothing's going to happen, Half an hour into it, they're like, everybody come over to McDonald's now, so we pull up, and I still don't have a clue what's going on, and as soon as we get out, some kind of improvised device goes off, loud explosion, and I'm like, jeez, what, this is out of hand, already. And of course, I'm the new guy, so they put me way on the end, furthest west in front of the building by myself. I think the second closest person by me was like 20 feet away, and it's just wall-to-wall people that were totally different than me, And I mean, I'm like watching the guy next to me, and he's shoving people, and I'm like, that's not a good idea. I was like, if something goes wrong, I was like, there's not going to be any left. So I'm like, yes, sir, sorry to bother you. And people are calling me names, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm sorry, we're out here, and just trying to do everything else. And I mean, I was really starting to get scared, I was like, I don't know I'm way out of my element. And even at that point, it took kind of a lot for me to get scared, I'd been in the Army and all these things, but I was just like, it's an unwinnable situation. As no matter what I can do, I was like, I can't defend myself amidst this many people, So I looked around, and I saw behind me a big glass window, and I was like, you know what, if this goes on, I'm going to turn around and shoot that window. I'm going to run in there and lock myself in the bathroom, because nobody here is going to care. Nobody here knows me. Nobody cares. They're not going to come to my defense. I was like, I just how I felt, And all of a sudden, it's just like everybody started like yelling and running, and I mean, it was like a Godzilla movie, and I mean, that's how and I'm like looking, and I'm like trying to figure out, should I start running too? Well, I could see the other officer, and he's just standing there like nothing's going on. I'm like, okay, well, I'll stand here like nothing's going on. Pretty soon, I could just see like this yellow reflected thing, and these reflectors, and all of a sudden horses come walking out of the darkness with these cops on it. And I'm like, I didn't know we had horses. I've never even seen it like that. I said, but that's pretty cool. Everybody just ran, and I'm like, if I ever have to be in a situation, that's what I want to do, So I was just like, ever since then, that's what I was trying to do, because and like I said, I can remember I've been in that situation several times since then, on the back of a horse, and it is just, you feel invincible. Because like I said, if the horse is listening to you, and I mean, it's just amazing what those animals will do for you.
This is the editor here. We had a technical error while recording the podcast. The following section will have static interference that lasts only for about a minute.
And like I said, I mean, to me, it was a life-changing thing. I went into the mounted unit at a time when I was going through divorce. It was probably the worst time of my life, and it really saved me from probably a career failure, because at that time I was, taking everything at work personally. I didn't really. I mean, I was decent to people, but it's like I figured everybody should know I'm a cop, and it's like these are my neighborhoods, and if you're screwing up in my neighborhood, you obviously don't make me mad. I had no idea about any of that stuff. I didn't think about it. Part of it was the reason is like I never empathized with anybody saying, you know what, it sucks if you don't have this or this is going on in your life. I never thought like that, because for the most part I had a pretty easy life. Other than this new thing with my divorce, after that it was, I was successful at everything I had done. I grew up in a family that was real loving and all this stuff, and I just was very arrogant about that, and I wouldn't say it was like culturally or racially driven. I just took it personally that people would do things when they knew that I was out here trying to run the show, and it was the wrong way to look at things. And like I said, getting thrown off, you can only get thrown off a horse so many times before you realize it's like, I'm not doing this right. I don't have the answers. And so then when you have to teach other people, it's like, well, I better come up with the answers, otherwise somebody's going to get hurt. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, it really did make me a lot, because I used to be pretty high, I was aggressive. I was that, meat-eater guy, and like I said, I'm not anymore. And I mean, there's other things that come into play with that, I returned back into a spiritual kind of thing, and then with my daughter and stuff. But I mean, other than that, I mean, I was one of those guys that was just, like I said, aggressive. And I just don't think that, especially in our line of work, there is room for that.
There isn't, or there?
I don't think there is. I don't think you can be. I think that if you go in with an aggressive attitude and I'm taking control of everything, you're going to make it worse.
Yeah. Because
you're coming into a fight as a fighter. You can't do that. You got to come in. I mean, you can be prepared and you should know what to do, but your focus should be. I guess when you ask people, well, what's our job? I guess over the years I've had different answers for that. You could say, well, I'm here to protect people. No, you're not there to protect people, because you always come there after the fact. I'm there to, solve crime. You're not solving any crimes, because I said you can't solve any crime without people helping you from the community. So the only thing you can really do there is to service people. Whatever that service might be at that time is what you got to do. So to do that service effectively, like you said, you can't go in there with those preconceived notions of this is how it's going to go, no matter what it is, whether it's a theft from auto or whether it's, this is a mess that I've been to 1,000 times. I know it's going to go, because it's not going to go that way. And I think that really being prepared for that and being relaxed and being on that neutral level makes you prepared for when something does happen. Because when something does happen and you're used to feeling that way, you'll know when it's going to happen. You'll sense it right before it happens. You're going to pick up and be like, whoa, this is not going right. And you'll be ready.
I always think that that you can't armor yourself enough as a cop. You need agility that comes with some kinds of flexibility and a calm mind as well. And I really like that concept. It's really making me reflect on coming into law enforcement. I had another career. I had another career as a paramedic, and I had a lot of those skills, but I felt like there was a lot of pressure and to abandon some of those skills. And now I'm kind of hearing you talk, I revalidate them again.
Yeah.
But that neutral mind thing is so interesting, because then you just come into a situation, and to me it's a type of alertness too. Because then you're alert to trouble too.
And I just think that, it's easy to get bogged down in what's going on. It's like every time a new policy comes out or something like that, you're taking that with you. And there's plenty of time to deal with that later. But and when you're in the game, you have to be in the game. And I think that's what, I think across anything that you see people that are good at things. If somebody's good at playing football or good at whatever it is, it's because in the moment they can just let it all go, and it just open everything. And like I said, that's really, I think, the goal. At least going on from where I'm at in my career, it's like I just want to be that person that like people are glad are there, because it's like it just makes it easier for everybody, Not somebody that comes in there and it's like gets everybody amped up and that kind of stuff, and we've all seen that. But it just, to me, it's way more enjoyable doing a job at that point when it's just like you have the ability to do this, but it couldn't do that if I was coming in there like I was in the past. You know, I couldn't be like that. You know, I mean, letting myself be vulnerable. I mean, it's just like I said, a horse when they act up and they're throwing their fits. If you don't go in there and be like, I'm putting myself in this situation, but yet I'm still going to be ready if something bad happens, then the horse is not going to trust you and you're going to get hurt because you're going to move too slow, or you got to have that connection. It's almost like a dance almost. And so, I mean, I can remember so many times where, I mean, the horse was kicking and jumping and I just stay there and just melt to him. And it's like, I didn't get hurt, you know. And I've been kicked. I've been double barreled by several horses. I've been, you know, dragged and all these different things. I've been really lucky, and part of that is just luck, you know, and physical, you know, being physically fit and stuff. But the majority of it is just being ready for it, you know, just knowing when it came, I was ready. You know, I could just feel it. Something was changing just a slight bit, and it was something I could recognize because, like I said, I was. It's just like, you know, almost if somebody stuck a note in front of you and said, "Hey, this is what's happening." That's what's the picture in your mind is, because, like I said, you're not thinking of anything else. You know, you're just feeling what the situation is. And like I said, I mean, it took a long time to recognize that. And like I said, I don't know how you really teach the people that on the fact that you just really have to, you know, let go of those things. You know, I don't have to act tough. I don't have to be the toughest person out there, because there's always somebody tougher. You know, you can get way more by having people respect you, you know. I mean, like I said, I don't have to, you know, you could do that. I mean, I could go out there and you can toss people around and stuff. But first of all, you're not going to last very long. The other thing is you're not going to be happy because people aren't going to like you. You want people to like you. You want people to respect you. And it's not like you have to, you know, be weak to them, but you have to be vulnerable. You know, you have to be open to them coming into you. You know, when you walk into a house and people are yelling, you can't yell over them, you know, because they're caught in some kind of trauma. You know, you have to just move to the side and wait for that cue. When they're ready to talk to you, they'll talk to you. And it's like, you know, they may be loud, they may be in your face and stuff, but you're gonna have to understand that the majority of people aren't gonna attack you. That's not their attacking. They're amped up, you know. And I mean, part of that, you know, comes from having a lot of training and skills and being confident in your skills and stuff like that, and just experience helps, you know. I mean, obviously being in this job for 20 years there's a lot more comfortability than when I was at, you know, 5-10 years, you know, because like I said, I've got all this experience under my belt that says, hey, you know, this is how it's going to go. But
so every call you go on today, so when's the last day you worked? You said you're up north.
let's see, I had training again, I think the last day I worked, so it was probably like last Tuesday maybe.
So you work day shift right now, and you do this very naturally, I'm sure, without a lot of pre-thought, but you walk into every call thinking about joining up. I mean, that's how you would actually probably phrase it. I've never heard that word put that way.
Well, I mean, it's a horse term, and like I said, it's the joining up part is that, you know, horse, when it's because a lot of horses, you know, they don't want to work. I mean, obviously, it's not their end goal is to do what you want them to do. I mean, their end goal is they want to eat and sleep and do these other things. But I mean, when they are ready to do something, they will give some kind of cue, whether, you know, it's you know, they'll bend an ear in to listen to you, or they'll look at you, or they'll slow down their gait, or they'll, you know, just focus on you. And there's just a million different ways you can to get them to that point, and there's different techniques. Everybody's got their own and stuff. But when it happens, you know, the horse is focused on communicating with you. They've accepted the fact that you want to communicate with them, and it's just a cue that says, hey, I'm ready to communicate. And so with humans, there's lots of things that people do, you know. There's tons of, you know, we talk about all kinds of, you know, nonverbal cues and stuff like that they do. But there's also, like I said, an energy level that if you're in tune to it, because I know what my energy level is, and it's like, I know that whatever the situation is, I'm going to try to be below that. Whether if the car's on fire or we're sitting, you know, drinking coffee in a coffee shop, that's where I want to be, because I know other people are reading my energy. And so when I go into a place, if there's somebody in there that I know doesn't like the police, or maybe I don't know doesn't like the police, if they're reading off an energy that doesn't, it's like, hey, I don't get that from this guy for some reason. It's like I think this way about police, but I don't think about that guy I don't know why, you know. And they might even say it to you. It's like, what makes you different? Why are you different? Well, nothing makes me different. It's just that we're human beings, and I see you as a human, and that's just what I think, you know. And it's like, and as long as I don't feel any energy from you, I'm not going to give it back to you, because I can definitely turn that energy up if I want to. I can stare people down if I need to. I mean, I know how to do that. But it's like, there's no, you know. And the funny thing is that when I was a kid, I don't know why, but I had this nervous tick that every time I would say something, I'd make this weird sound after I did it, you know. And I totally forgot about it. And one day for some reason I thought about it, and I'm like, Mom, did I used to do this? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, well, why did I stop? And she's like, well, because your friends would make so much fun of you all the time. You just finally stopped. And I thought back, and I'm like, well, what had happened is that I just stopped talking. You know, I would listen more, and I just was really nervous about saying things. And so I really started like watching people and picking up on these things and trying to find different ways of communicating. But one of the things I learned very quickly is that if you look menacing, people won't talk to you. And so I used that for a lot of years as a tool to just keep people away from me, you know, not because I didn't like people, it was because I would get so embarrassed every time and I've had some attention issues over my life, and it's like, I was always embarrassed by it, talking fast and all that stuff. And so if you did that, people wouldn't bother you, and they wouldn't get embarrassed, you wouldn't feel bad, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But, you know, it's just funny looking back at it now. It's just that it's kind of been a helpful kind of thing, because it's like now I do that, and I feel very comfortable going in and letting people rattle on for 20 minutes about something and be like, oh, okay, well, what can I do for you, you know?
You know, it's funny you bring the menacing thing, because I knew you for years, and you look so menacing even then that I even told that I was probably intimidated by you. So that conversation we had in the hallway is because I'm like, I'm the EAP director. I like to get to know how people are doing. Oh, he's made a huge transition out of mounted. I wonder how he's managing. Thinking somehow I was going to offer you something, and instead I'm sitting there with a slack jaw listening to you talk about basically zoology.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. You know, you said something here, a couple things I got to ask you about. There's a lot of things I'd like to ask you about. But one was when you said if there were 10 horses outside and we went out there, you know that they'd come up to you. Mm-hmm. Why would they want to come up to you?
Well, because they're going to know right away just by the way I move. Because
Why would they want to come up to a human?
Because they're going to recognize something that's, I mean, it causes curiosity. When it's just like if you went to, you know, let's say I went over to a mosque, and all of a sudden I walked in there as myself and I started speaking whatever language it is they're speaking. Right away they'd be like, wow, this guy speaks our language.
Yeah.
And they'd want to come talk to me probably, because it's like, this is very rare. Same thing with horses.
Okay.
If you walk into a field and the horses are like, and I've picked up things, like I said, spending so much time. I mean, that's a lot of time to spend. I mean, if you think about it, I thought about it, I've done the math a few times, but it's over like 20-some thousand hours of spending around horses that I spent. And so that's a lot of time so I picked up their behaviors that probably subconsciously, I don't even know what I'm doing. You know, like I said, carrying, you know, one of the things I very rarely look at people in the eyes when I'm talking to them, especially at work. You know, I'll focus on my note, because it tells them, it's giving them their vulnerability. I'm still watching their hand. I'm still doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing, watching their proximity, doing this stuff. I'm doing those things, but I know what is confrontational for humans, and so I'm not going to do that. And and this is very good with different cultures, because, you know, I think as Americans, especially, and even as Caucasians, we assume, well, everybody just does what we want to do. And that's way different. And cultures are, you know, cultures that are trying to adapt to us. And like I said, it's very, like I said, non-threatening and very easy for me to do. Like I said, I just pick it up. And so I know that those are things that I had to learn to do, because I used to be, you know, run out, walk straight out to the horse, throw on his halter, grab him by the lead rope, drag him out of there. You know, he's dragging back and stuff. And it's like, well, you know, right away, people are like, have you tried doing this? Have you tried doing that? Because what you're doing is wrong, you know? And until you realize, it's like, wait a minute, they're not going to ever do what I want to do. They're going to do what they want to do. And so once you've made that commitment, you're going to do it. I mean, it's just like if I came here and I knew that you didn't like people wearing their shoes in the house, I wouldn't wear my shoes in the house because I know I would get into problems if I did it. You know, I've learned those rules. So I know the norms for the horses, and it's the same for all the horses because that's how they are. You know, there's going to be some that are more aggressive, some that are less aggressive, but eventually they're going to.
You know, I've seen this, the shoe analogy is funny. I've seen this both with paramedics and police officers, because I've been both and I've been around them and I've been an observer of them. You know, the first couple, 3 to 4 years are a lot of fun because they're really running a gun, and then they either have some disappointment or some setback or some slap down, or the shine wears off a little bit, and sometimes they stay embittered for the rest of their career and low functioning. Sometimes these people make these remarkable transitions where they kind of surrender a little bit to the job. I think they do. Like, what's the reality of ambulance work? It's not going from one amazing call to another. Sometimes it's taking elderly women with broken hips to the hospital and being as nice as you can and trying to avoid any extra bumps. Asking them about where they grew up. Being a cop, walking into a room and then just going, what needs to be done here? How do I serve these folks? So I'm just saying that I think what you're talking about is that coming to terms. Well, I'm aware that some cops never transition out of that. You know, they just maintain. You know, whatever they're doing isn't working, so they just work less, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, versus what's no longer working, or they don't desire it, or they've been thrown off, as you might say, enough times they get really hurt or scared, and they're like, I got to change this thing up, and then they successfully do that.
Well, I mean, I recently with you know, the body worn camera thing is I think it's a really good thing, but it's been hard for me as a person that's not real tech savvy, and just I wasn't raised up in a cop culture where that was one of the things we had to do. You know, radio I have no problem doing because that was from day one. Radio. You know, that's easy. You know, but it's been a transition, and I'm doing pretty good a job of it. But you know, recently I got some some complaints about not having videos. You know, and at first I was like, you know, it's like this is typical. You know, it's like they don't care about the work we're doing. And I was thinking, you know what? So what? You know, I made a mistake. So when I wrote that down, I had an IR complaint. I wrote that right in response. It's like, you know what? I'm looking at this as a training issue. You know, it happens. You know, it happened, and I didn't do it intentionally, but it's what it is. You know, but I could see very easily if you didn't have, and granted, I'm very lucky because I came from a military background where it's like you understand the military process of how it's like you have no control of this. This is just you do the job and that's it. You know, so I always fall back on that, but at the same time, it's like, you know, I'm still gonna do what I do, and I'm not gonna let that deter me because, like I said, you're gonna have bumps in the road in anything you do. But I can see if you're really dragged down and being unhappy and not looking at this, because I mean it's a great job. You know, I mean it's really a job that's, you know, you get in what you put into it, really, and it's like I'm not gonna let something like that set me back because, like I said, I mean, you know, it doesn't benefit anybody. You know, and like I said, I mean it's fine to joke around about it and say, well, yeah, the next thing you're going to do is do this. But I mean, I don't like that. I hate negativity. And one thing that's really changed big in me, I guess, since the beginning of the horses and the end of the horses is that I cannot tolerate people not being respectful to people. I just cannot tolerate it. I mean, I can tolerate you screwing up, but I can't tolerate you going to talking to somebody and not giving them their respect. You know, whether it's, well, I don't have time to deal with this. You better make time for it. I mean, that's your job. You know, make time for people. And then, like I said, if I see somebody doing that or getting spun up about stuff that doesn't, I just have real low tolerance for that. Not to the point where I'm going to take it out on them, but I'm just like, it's just like, you know what, I don't want to be around that person because it's just like, it doesn't need to be like that. You know, and it's like, I know there's people that, you know, one of the things about horses you have to learn real quick is that there would be some horse that you come across that you cannot fix or you cannot get to work. And so as you get the experience right away, you can tell, you know, it's like, I'm not going to waste my time here because I know that this horse has been either due to poor training or poor experience or even poor conformation of the way they're built. They're not going to work for this job. And it's like, that horse is a great horse. I'd love to be able to do that. I'd love the validation of saying, you know what, I brought this horse around, but it's like, no, it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work. And so it's like, you find people in your life, I think, sometimes that you're just like, I can't change their opinion no matter what I do. And it's like, if they would come to me, I would do anything for them, but I'm not going to go out there and try to force on my stuff on them because it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I've just seen people like that. It's like you tell them, hey, you can't do that, you know.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. And it's like bouncing off a wall, you know. And I mean, you just try to avoid that. But I mean, it's like you can't let it change your attitude or change the way that you're going to treat the next person. You know?
Yeah. Gosh, good for you. I wish I'd love to be in patrol and go on calls with you. I'd love to participate in this. I really enjoy it. I feel I take some pride in knowing that people would come up to me as a cop and say, "Oh, you just look like someone I could talk to," or I think I can tell you this," or even on suicidal people. Sometimes I'd just be in the back of the crowd, and then they would pick me out. You know, so I'm proud that I was picking up on that energy or recognizing it. It makes me just wish I'd love to learn more from you and just put it in practice. I want to just try something. I just want to show you a picture and just tell me, would you describe it to the radio audience or the listening audience?
It looks like a lion tamer. It's got a couple lions in there. Like I said, I mean, I can't tell exactly what he's doing. I don't know much about lion taming other than what I've seen. But
What do you notice about the lions?
well, there's one lion that looks like he's focused. The other lions don't appear like they're even interested. Like they're ignoring him. It's kind of the deal, I guess. I don't know. I would say that this guy probably, I mean, because lions are pride. They work in a pride. And there's the same
Yeah, so the opposite of horses.
The opposite of horses, but there's still a hierarchy there. Even predators have a hierarchy. Just like humans will learn a hierarchy in a certain situation. And if one, thing about horses is, usually about horses, if one horse trusts you, then they all trust you. And I mean, look at this picture. It's probably similar for lions. If you work around, them and they trust you, then they accept you into the pride. Then you become one of the pride members. And then it's wherever you are in the hierarchy, And like I said, I don't know.
So I was going to ask about the hierarchy. I'll give up on the picture. The hierarchy is so the horses. Where do they look? Where do they rank you?
Well,
do they rank you?
First,
so they look to you for I don't know if guidance, but to take their temperature off you. Or,
well, the moment that a horse recognizes that you're speaking their language, whatever that is, they're gonna start to accept you, because first of all, they're always afraid of you. When you walk forward, you get your eyes in front of your head. As soon as they even if they've been around humans their whole life, most likely they're going to be afraid of you. I mean, horses are overly dramatic. If you jump towards them or anything, they're going to way overreact because it's like, it's just in their nature. So, I mean, once you've established that they're already below you, but yet you want them to come into you. You want them to accept you as the herd. So horses are going to constantly test you, and it might be super simple, like just leaning into you. But if they lean into you and you don't do something back to them, then they're going to assume that then you're below them right away. So like when you walk up to a horse, like let's say you went out here and there was a fence and there was a horse behind it, you walked out there and you started petting him on the head and he started rubbing into you, you'd be like, oh man, this horse really likes me. No, he's showing he's totally dominant over you. And that's a very comfortable place to be. And so, back to the beginning when I was telling you about that lady getting bit, one of the things she used to always make a habit with her horse was she'd walk up and kiss him on the muzzle.
Okay.
When two horses meet, initially they go up and they'll stick their noses to each other and they'll breathe on each other. And if one horse doesn't back away, then they escalate it right away. And so if you are comfortable with your horse, maybe your horse is just used to doing that. But if you go to a horse that is treating you as another person to herd and you try to do that, they're going to bite the crap out of you. And it's going to be aggressive. And that horse has may never been aggressive to humans at all, but you give them that window and they're going to treat you just like a regular horse because they don't know any better. And so, that's what I learned, because when I first started, it's like I came in, we had these gray training sweatshirts, and I came in and the thing was completely green. And they're like, what happened to you? It's like, my horse keeps biting me, he hates me. Well, why are you letting him bite you? I don't know how to stop him. It's like, I didn't understand any of that stuff, but it's like, the horse does that stuff because you let him do it. It's just like, why did my 15-year-old take off with my car? Well, because I made it so he could do it, it's just, like I said, I mean, I don't know, I kind of lost direction on where we're going with that.
Well, let me just add something here. Before we end, if you enjoyed this podcast, you might be interested in my book. It's called Good Cop, a Get Healthy, Stay Healthy Guide for Law Enforcement. And so in the book, I talk about a lot of topics, and it can be purchased through Amazon. And you can also just find more information about the book at goodcop.com. There's 50,000 words in that book. The word horse is not in there at all. I think dog and elephant might be. But I really am very impressed by what you say. I feel like I want to be a student of your message. And I really appreciate you sharing it with us. Something I want to come back around to, just something you said that I thought was pretty profound. You said a lot of profound things. One was that you had to learn to think like another species. And that was something that brought you back to even yourself in ways, because you acknowledged some of your, I guess, maybe shortcomings or such. That was an amazing thought, that you had to learn to think like another species.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you have to do that all the time. I mean, like I said, after my divorce, I went through lots of counseling, a lot of self stuff. And some of it stuck, some of it didn't. I was handed a dozen books that, read and all this stuff. And I always felt really bad that I couldn't, and I've always had a real problem in my personal relationships with just connecting with people that I've been. And I cared about those people and I love those people, but I just could never get to that point where I was connecting. And, for a long time I struggled with that. And I was like, why can't you do this? It seems like other people are so natural. And, until I made that decision that, you know what, it's okay. That's how you are. That's how you're wired. There's a reason for it. And then things became easy. It's like I didn't see those things as shortcomings. I mean, I still have those problems, and I always have those problems. But I mean, the key is to communicate and say, you know what, you always got to be ready to say, I don't know what I'm doing. If you can admit that, then you will always be successful, because when it comes up to a chance where things are going to be iffy, you're going to back away and say, you know what, I can't do it. And there's nothing wrong with that, And so I think that, when I go, it wasn't too long ago, I got stopped. I was on a call, I'm an hit and run actually, and this guy stopped by on his bike, African-American gentleman, said who his name was, told him he was a lawyer and stuff. And he said, the thing he said to me was, you've got to teach these younger officers, how to think, how to respect people's race and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about, But then when I thought about it, I was like, he's 100% right, because what he's telling me is that there's a problem, okay? I may not have the answers to that problem, but I've got to look at it a way. It's like, just like with my not understanding people's emotions, I understand other people have it, and if I want to respect that people and I want them to communicate with me, then I'm going to have to acknowledge the fact that, I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to this. So I don't know what it's like for race differences and any of that stuff. And it's like, but you know what, you're right. If there's a problem, it needs to be addressed, no matter what it is. And like I said, we may not agree on it, we may not work on it, but if you don't let yourself become vulnerable and accept the fact that you're not perfect, you're going to be wrong. And that's where I think a lot of cops, we think we have the law, we have a badge, we have all these things. We're perfect because no, you're not. You're just another human being with a different uniform on. So I mean, I think that, that's a hard road for people to, because, the first time that somebody goes against you and doesn't do what you tell them, and they really put you in a bad spot, like maybe you get hurt or something, you're going to know real quick that, none of that stuff matters. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, but that's why it's so important to get those respectful relationships and show people respect, because even people who don't like you and don't agree with you, if you show them respect, chances are they're not going to do anything bad to you, because you've already given them the respect. Who cares? Who cares if they think they got one up on you, or they go back and say, yeah, I made him look like a punk. Who cares? Mm-hmm. You walked away from there and you're all right, And so, I mean, that's just it. Like I said, the horses, like I said, I didn't think that way before. And it's not all, like I said, it's not all because of horses, but it definitely did give me a long, prolonged opportunity to really do a lot of self-evaluation of myself. And like I said, I know I'm a better person for it.
Well, I think it was an essential pathway for you. The one thing you mentioned, you just said it a second ago, it's basically self-awareness, and that's the path that you took for it. Communication, which is interesting, which includes trying to recognize other people's energy, recognizing that you're just literally listening, which, I heard a definition of listening the other day that said it's the generosity of time, where you just are kind of just open and ready, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing somebody that studied themselves a bit, and that's very impressive. Well, Andy, we should stop here. I learned a ton. I took a bunch of notes that I don't know what to do with.
That's probably more talking than anybody's ever heard me talking.
Really? And we got it recorded.
So yeah.
And I think it's almost like you kind of got unleashed a little bit. I think you have a lot to share in this area, and I think you're a huge benefit to me to share it on this podcast. So.
I appreciate that.
Well, I think we might have some other chances to talk some more. I hope so.
Sure.
Anything you thought when you're coming over here you thought I might ask you about that I didn't?
No, not really. I mean, like I said, I don't, I try not to, like I said, I don't know. I talked to, like I said, I figured it would be more like we did this last time. And like I said, one of the things when I was coming here, my girlfriend's like, oh man, it doesn't sound like something you'd be into because you don't like talking about yourself and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I mean, horses is something that really excites me, and even though I don't really deal with it anymore, and I don't deal with horses anymore, but I mean, I still have that feeling in me, I mean, and like I said, I've been able to find another avenue to apply it to, and I think my job is just another continuation of that, I mean, so yeah, I mean, there's not really anything I thought of that was
okay.
just
Well, I think maybe if we get you another time, I'd like to hear more about how you approach people on the street with this stuff. All right, thanks so much.